Prosegur is a private security company. We are operating in 26 countries. Basically focus on two things, the operating model and the innovation model. Software, particularly software, is becoming a more important component of almost every product. Technology is becoming a key part of strategy. You cannot control the things that happen to you, but you do control the way you react to them. I always say that leadership is something that people give to you. It's built on trust. I think there is no better managerial talent in our era than moving and transforming organizations. Don't go half-heartedly into it. That doesn't work.
This is CIONET TV. My name is Hendrik Deckers. I'm here today with Javier Cabrerizo, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Prosegur. A very warm welcome, Javier.
Thank you, Hendrik. It's a pleasure to be here with you and all the friends from CIONET.
Javier, you have a Master in Corporate Finance from the EA Business School in Madrid and an MBA from INSEAD and degrees from MIT and Harvard. You started your career in the startup world, where you even IPO'd a company called Meta4. Your second career was at Oracle, 5 years EMEA level, 5 years in Silicon Valley, and your third career now is in big corporates. You did the transformation at Unidad Editorial, big media company, and now since 2018 you are the COO of Prosegur. So, Xavier, explain me that a little bit. Why 3 different careers? How did you make that decision to do 3 complete different things?
It sounds like I'm very old, doesn't it, Hendrik? So yeah, I think it's, life has driven you in different directions, and I learned a lot along the way. So the first ones, when I was in startup world, it was basically by chance that I got into one of the companies. It was Meta4, and we learned a lot. That was very successful. We took that one public, but in startup world, you have ups and you have downs. So we were very successful with that one. I was so with another one, and then we miserably failed with the third one. So I've been there, goods and bads, and it was a very instructive process. You learn how to motivate teams and how to go through very, very tough situations. The transition to the second one was actively something that also happened by chance, because when we were selling the company, the failed company, to Oracle, they didn't quite buy the company, but they bought me, basically. So I got the opportunity to join Oracle, and I spent, I didn't know I was going to survive in a corporate world, because I was coming from 3 startups or 3 smaller companies before. But my wife, who is the smart part of the couple, she said, well, why don't you give it a chance and try that and see how it goes? And I said, okay, I'm going to try for a couple of months and see if it works. And I spent 10 years, so it was not bad at all. So yeah, I spent time in EMEA with our go-to-market and sales and services organization, and then I spent 5 years at our headquarters. And again, you learn a lot from those experiences, being at the headquarters of a very tech-intensive company like Oracle. Or you could say the same from any product-driven organization. You really learn the ins and outs of technology business, how big, great products are created, how do you excel at execution, and the laser focus on being the best at what you do. So that was very, very good and instructive for me as well. And then eventually I wanted to apply a lot of those learnings to other non-tech companies I envisioned that a lot of non-tech companies were going to go through this process that we are now seeing, digital transformation or massive corporate transformations. And I wanted to focus on those, basically bringing my background and my understanding of technology to other non-tech companies that could benefit from using technology to improve their businesses. And that's what got me to both Unidad Editorial in the media world and now at Prosegur.
Okay, and you are the COO, and what are your responsibilities today?
So what I run is some of the corporate functions, finance, administration, HR, and also IT. CIO is in my team, and also innovation and cybersecurity. Innovation, development of new products, and also cybersecurity.
Okay, super. And for those of us who don't know Prosegur, can you tell us a little bit, give us the context. What kind of company is it? How big is it? How old is it? How many people?
Yeah, so Prosegur is a private security company. It was founded 40 years ago, around 4 billion in revenue, 3.6 last year with COVID, 150,000 people operating in 26 countries. So probably if you're traveling in Spain or if you're traveling in Latin America, you've seen us in many of the airports or in your buildings or in your bank branches or nuclear energy plants or we provide a lot of those services. We also provide services into the B2C world, so your home alarm. That's a big business for us. We also do cybersecurity. We also do cash in transit, managing cash and the logistics around cash. And also we do some outsourcing processes for large banks and insurance companies.
Okay, and so you were brought in what was it, 2018 to make a change, I can imagine. So what was the state of the company? What kind of change was necessary then, and what are the drivers of change still today?
So I think the board was very conscious of what's going on in many industries. We're seeing in many industries how technology is affecting the business lines. Whether you have disruption because some new entrants are coming into your industry or because the way you use technology into your products is becoming more and more important, the board was very conscious that we had to change something, so adapt, be better suited, better prepared for those times and those dynamics in the market. They started considering different alternatives, and eventually after a period I landed into the job. And I think the good thing here, what they were very specific at, was we need to transform the way we operate, and in order to do that they put some of these functions, this operation, this running day-to-day in my position, so that you could really push the transformation of the organization really from the way you operate, impacting all of the business. So that was a very bold move, I believe, and that it's working fine for us because you can really impact the way a company works by really managing those day-to-day operations.
So I can imagine that you need to make the company more agile, that you need to create new growth strategies. Is that your focus for the last couple of years?
Yes, so we basically focus on two things: the operating model and the innovation model. You can say operating model is how you run the company and how you're profitable, how you're more efficient, how you consume less capital, less working capital. And innovation is how you're going to grow, what type of new products you're going to bring to the market. Oversimplifying, those are the two focus areas: operate and innovate.
So let's talk about operate first. What are the things that you're putting in place so that and how are you changing, standardizing the operating model? Where is your focus there?
Right. So we are, like I said, we are operating in 26 countries, and we have 5 different lines of business. And a company like Prosegur that has grown very fast in the last 10 years through acquisitions, we've made more than 100 acquisitions, normally has a variety of systems and ways of operating, right? And at some point, that variety becomes non-efficient because it makes it difficult for you to continue growing or to moving at the speed that you want. More complexity adds cost and slows down the operation. So the first thing we did was, think about the technology foundation and how do we modernize a lot of our legacy and the architecture and the systems that run the company. Again, after many years and multiple acquisitions, we have a lot of legacy. And then focus on that new architecture, a cloud-based architecture, work very hard into the integration of the different applications, modernize and remove a lot of the legacy, work very hard on the data quality. So do all the technical stuff and then really focus on the processes and how the company is effectively run, so that you can be more, you use the best practices, you standardize the operation. And we need that, Hendrik, because in different countries we have different combinations of businesses that we run. We might be running one business in one country, and in another country we run 5 businesses. So we need a model that is very flexible and can run 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 businesses, and very scalable. And that forced us to rethink very deeply both the technology and the process and how do we operate. And that was the clear focus.
And can you elaborate a little bit on how you did that? I mean, is it one ERP system for every business line, or you have the same system for every organization? Because, I mean, there's some strategic decisions and strategies that need to be taken there.
Right. So we started from the process. We started thinking, basically focusing on 4 or 5 key processes. Your employees, what we call hire to retire. What is the life cycle of the employee? What needs to happen? Hiring, training, payments, benefits, vacation, performance appraisal, so employee-related processes. Customer-related processes, from when you have an opportunity till you sell, till you deliver, you invoice, you collect. How do we run that? Supplier and providers processes, and reporting and finance processes. So we started thinking, but invested a lot in gathering what was the best way of running each one of those processes. And we defined those. This is the best way to effectively run it. And then we looked at what are the systems that support those functions, and what would be the best system to do that. And yes, we are standardizing in the deployment on ERP. We're using Oracle Cloud for that. We standardize all our HR operation, recruitment, hiring, training, payments, administration, personnel administration, everything. We standardize CRM on Microsoft Dynamics, and we standardize our billing systems. So those were like the back end, the 4 back end pillars that run the company. You really want to focus on those, because that's how you make or break the company. That's how you make money. That's how you ensure that your processes are efficient and your cash consumption is really under control. And then the other thing that we did was focus on the operation, the systems that we run for the different businesses. So how do we run our alarms business? How do we run our security business? How do we run our cash business? Each one of those has different custom developed applications that need to integrate very well with this bedrock of back-end systems. And we worked very hard in APIs, interconnecting applications, and data models to ensure data consistency and a proper data governance across the board.
Okay, a very important wave that we now see in technology is also to invest in automation of processes.
Yes.
How are you doing on that front?
Yeah, we focused a lot on that because we used to have a lot of tasks within those processes that were manual or based on a lot of interactions and changes of information along the process. We saw that very early. We created a group for RPA, Robotic Process Automation, started 3 years ago. Currently, I think we have run already something like 400 processes. That team has automated sales and operations and HR and finance processes. We're very proud of that team, by the way. They 2 years in a row, they earned the worldwide prize from Blue Prism, which is the technology that we use, as the most innovative team in the world in RPA applications to business. And we're now extending that, adding some OCR, optical character recognition, natural language processing, and some machine learning to process tasks that are repetitive and that are very easy for a software robot to understand. So we're very well advanced on that, I think.
So a lot of work has gone into standardize the processes, standardize the system that support these processes, and then automate these processes and take away manual labor as much as possible. Quite impressive. Now the second part that you said is next to operating model, you have the innovation model. So let's talk about the new stuff, because that's of course very exciting as well. No, so what's happening? How are you organizing your innovation at Prosegur?
Right. I think this is a very important thing to consider, because typically when you look at technology, you always look at internally how are you going to operate more efficiently. You don't always look at how are you going to add technology to your products to make them more competitive and differentiate yourself. So this was a very clear focus for us. Now, being a non-tech company from background, there are a lot of things that you need to adapt to make the company more tech savvy and incorporate this mindset. So what we did was we created an innovation team, a centralized innovation team, connected with the innovation organizations in each one of the business lines. And we defined our innovation methodology. How are we going to create new products? What are the stages that a new candidate needs to go through, and validation at different stages before we launch? How are we going to do the handover once the product gets into production? So we did a lot of that. We created what we call tech studios for some key technology areas that are very relevant for us. Artificial intelligence specifically applied to video and to image processing and analytics. This is very relevant in our world. And also IoT in how it is applied to getting sensors and measuring signals from sensors. So we created the methodology, we created the tech studios. Then we said, okay, there's a lot of innovation that's going on out there. So how do we tap the innovation that's going on outside? So we created the Open Innovation Initiative. It's called Come In. We're in the second year now. I think we've interacted with more than 400 startups already in the 8 challenges that we launched last year. Very interesting companies that won each one of those challenges, like how do you have a COVID-free environment, for example. That was one that we launched. After the Come In, or at the same time, we also created a tech, what we call a venture capital, a corporate venture capital. It's called Prosegur Tech Ventures. And we allocated 30 million euros for that, and finding companies where we wanted to invest, develop, and have closer to us. And now what we're launching is the internal innovation, the entrepreneurship and initiatives that we can bring from our own organization. And we've been super surprised by that. We just launched it 2 months ago, and we got 7,000 people engaged on it, and more than 1,000 ideas that came through. So, you know, really a very good feedback and very good sign in terms of the willingness of the organization to innovate and bring new things forward.
So you have a structure, you have the money, the resources to do it, you have the relationships with the outside world, with startups, and you have an internal program to do that innovation. Tell me a little bit more about these innovation challenges. How does that work? How did you implement that? And can you give maybe an example of something that came out of that?
Yes, so a challenge might be, how do we, in our alarms business, how do we know if a signal, an alarm that's coming from, if you have an alarm in your house, the people that are operating it, we're not in Belgium, but we should be there anytime soon. How do you operate this signal and decide if it is a real alarm or a false alarm? Imagine your dog, your pet is moving around your house and that triggers the alarm. Well, that's a false alarm for you because it's your pet, it's your house. There's no need for an intervention. But the system doesn't know that. And then it gets to a human, an operator that needs to check it out and say, hey, Mr. Deckers, is this okay? Something's going on at your house. A lot of that can be filtered. You know, you can now apply vision processing, image processing to say, this is not a real alarm. You don't need to worry about this because it's your pet and there's nothing to worry. So you filter that out and then you focus on the real things that should trigger an intervention. Why is that important? Because it makes the whole operation more productive, but it also makes the customer satisfaction higher, because now I'm not going to disturb you if there is no real alarm, and I'm really going to be way faster if there is a real alarm that's affecting you. Other examples are in our security monitoring of critical infrastructures, say an airport or a train station, or a retailer. We have people on the ground, and we also have people on our operating centers that are monitoring screens and they're looking at what's going on. The same logic applies. If you can use some artificial intelligence, some video analytics, image analytics processes, you can detect even when the human is not seeing it, because it's very difficult to cover a very wide area. You can detect things that are going on that should trigger an intervention from one of our operating resources. So those are the types of things, very complex things to solve from a technology standpoint, where you need some of your internal resources, some of external resources, and set it in motion so that you can define a product that solves that need.
So you define the challenge, the problem that you want to solve, you throw it out in the open, everybody can come up with some good ideas, and then you have a winner, and then maybe you invest in that company as well to develop that solution. Is that how I can visualize the process?
Yes, we are interested from an investment perspective. Sometimes we run a pilot. For example, we run another one that won with us was how do you have a COVID-free environment? At the beginning, you remember when we were entering our offices, we wanted to know how many people are in there, what's the social distancing, what is the tracking, and counting people and things like that might be sometimes difficult. So we found a company, Korean company, that actually measured vibrations in the environment, and that way could easily count individuals and even through walls, which is something that's not always easy. Because sometimes you don't have, it's difficult to get into all areas. And we implemented that, we've tested some of that and it worked and it's fine. Some other times we do not invest, but we do operate, we become partners in the market. So we also got another one in retail that was also focused on individual or social distancing and people counting that we implemented in some of our security customers. So it might trigger an investment opportunity, or it might just trigger a partnering opportunity.
Tell me a bit more about your internal innovation and entrepreneurship program that you have implemented, and where you see these massive first results and ideas coming up. What's new there?
So the objective was, there's obviously a lot of innovation happening outside, but the people that really know what's going on and what customers need sometimes or frequently are the people that are working on it, right? And you have them inside. Yeah. So it might not be the super duper AI model, but they know, hey, if we did this with the way we run this process with the customer, we're going to reduce 2 hours the delivery time. So we launched the initiative with the aim of finding those types of ideas. So small things that can, on an ongoing basis, on a continuously continuously improving basis, get some improvements. And probably 75% of what we got were those types of ideas. So do this when you call the customer, do this when you service this customer, do this when you invoice, whatever. And a lot of those are progressively being implemented. And we got a good 20-25% of initiatives that were like, these are crazier ideas, if you want, more like new businesses. And from those, what we did was an internal selection process, and we ended up with 7 that are going to be run as new initiatives. And so the way it works is we allocate 20% of the time of those individuals and their teams to pursue that opportunity, define what exactly they want to do, how are they going to implement it, what might be the impact. And by November this year, 2021, we should see the result of that job. So that includes things like monitoring pets for our alarms business, or doing a digital token for assets, for valuable assets that we can store. So things like are not our day-to-day business, but are interesting, and we can explore and then add to our operation.
Now, it's not every day that in our interview series that we interview COOs, and most of the time it's CDOs, CIOs, and so on. So, but you are a COO with a lot of tech background. I mean, yes. And from the startup and from the big tech company. So, tell me a little bit, how is IT and digital organized in Prosegur?
Right. So we have there are two different teams. One is IT for running all our internal systems, infrastructure, communications, and that's the IT. It's run by a CIO and CTO. And then we have the innovation team, which is more focused on development of new solutions, like things that we were talking about before, video analytics, AI applied to some of the things that we do. Those are two separate teams. They share, however, a common reference framework or reference architecture. And this is important because you don't want your new products to be launched in a totally different direction from the way you are running your internal systems, because those two need to be connected. They need, ideally, you want them to run in the same environment. So that's how we operate. CIO is one team, innovation and product development, new product development is another team. They are both in my team, they are peers, and they interact a lot because there's a lot of mutual connection there between things that one is developing and that might be useful for the other. And like I said, they are both sharing the same infrastructure.
Can you disclose a bit how big these teams are, both the innovation and the CIO, CTO teams?
So the IT team, all in all, is around 1,000 people in different parts of the world, running all the business lines, like I said, supporting all the business lines and the common systems. The innovation team is a smaller one. Right now, all in all, we probably have 40, 50 between internal and external. And it's growing fast. This team was created 2 years ago, and as we add more products and more initiatives to the pipeline, what we expect is that team is going to grow. Yeah.
Okay, and then the IT team, I can imagine, since you're now in a wave of standardization and automation, a lot is central, or you have a federated model? What's the IT operating model?
There is a central team, and then you have the operations running in the countries and the different geographies. So not in every country, we regionalize some of that, but the central team is the one that sets standards and defines architectures and integrates all the different things. Then you have teams on the ground that effectively implement a lot of these things and run the day-to-day of many of those things. There's a lot of local tasks when you're running your system based, interacting with your customers, with your local business lines. So you need that local presence. That's how we operate.
So we talked about automating processes. I can imagine also, you have a ton of data, I can imagine, especially now that all this video data is coming in, all this sensor data is coming in, but next to that you have HR, finance, and operations data and so on. So let's talk a little bit about your data strategy.
Right.
Data is the new gold, so how do you and Prosegur look at this today?
So I couldn't state how important that is. It's so important. What we did was we created the function of the chief data officer. He's reporting to my CIO. He came from the banking industry, very well versed in data governance principles, because obviously in banking because of regulation, they are a little bit ahead of some other industries in how they manage data internally. Yeah. And what we did was analyze how data travels throughout every process. That's where we started. So how a customer name or address or whatever moves from your CRM to your operating system to your billing system to your collecting system. Because if you don't fix that, you're going to have a lot of operational issues, as we used to have. So we put a lot of focus on, when we define the process, what is the data journey? How is data being used by different systems? And that got us to data governance models, defining very precisely where data can be written and where the others are just reading the data, which was not obvious every time, because there's a lot of real day-to-day things that need to change once you change that. So before, the billing person could change the name of the customer. Not anymore. That needs to come from your CRM. So things like that seem trivial and simple get a lot of friction in the organization. You really need to design those very, very well, down to the nitty-gritty details. So that was a very important focus for us in the definition of the processes. The other one was the reporting mechanisms and getting to what we all want, which is one single source of truth, which is easier said than done, of course. And I'm sure many of our viewers are suffering the same thing, right? You get to a meeting and everybody comes with their own Excel spreadsheet or PowerPoint. No, my data says it's 3%. No, my data says it's 7%. So how do you eliminate that? And we invested, and we are still in the process of having one source of data and ensuring that people go to the source. So I try to ban PowerPoint presentations when we're talking about numbers. Go to the source live. Let's connect to the system, see the report, and we all see the data. So there's nothing going on with the data, right? Yeah. So we're pushing that. We're still a long way to go with that one, but that's very relevant. And the third thing related to data is, how do you comply, of course, with regulation, but also manage and secure all the data that's coming from your customers? There's a lot of privacy concerns that you need to look at, and because cameras and alarms, and there's a lot of details that you need to really pay attention to when you manage that data. So very important, super important aspect of the whole process.
I can imagine, and I can imagine also security. IT security must be very important in a security company, no? So tell me, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, IT security, cybersecurity is of course very important, but is that also a service that you provide? Are you also in that part of the business?
Yes. So yes, it's also in my team. And what we did was we created a CISO, a global CISO, and then each one of the businesses has their own CISO, functionally reporting to the global CISO. This CISO is reporting to me. He's not reporting to IT, which was the first organizational design decision. Do we want security to be under IT, or do we want it separate? There are pros and cons. We decided we want it separate so that we could really look at the way we are set up, our architecture, our security, our systems, our everything monitoring, and really look from outside into our systems. It creates some friction, but a positive friction, but I also think it's, for us, is working fine. Also, you may know that we had a cyber attack in November 2019, right? And so we always pay a lot of attention to security, but that even raised the level of relevance of cybersecurity inside our organization. And it's now something we report to the board on a regular basis, and we really pay a lot of attention to it. Remember, we also have a cybersecurity unit. It's called Cypher. It's a business line. So it's also providing services to us, like if we were a customer. The most demanding and exigent customer, I have to say, but we have that team working for us as well.
Okay. So how would you describe your role in the organization today? I mean, you're there and for more than 3 years now, and maybe we can have a look at, if we look at an average week, where do you spend most of your time nowadays?
I try to split the time between product innovation, new products coming to customers, IT, because there are a lot of systems that are being rolled out right now, so we really need to pay attention to our project management and how we're rolling out in one country and how are we preparing for the next country. And then to the day-to-day of our administration, finance, and HR, and try to leave some time for organizational issues. But I try to organize, those are my key areas: product developments, new products that we are launching, IT rollout of our different systems and decisions that we have to make there, and then the day-to-day management of HR in a very large organization, and then the finance and administration in a very large organization. Luckily, I have a super team, so they all take care of almost everything.
Mm-hmm. And how do you look at the CIO function? I mean, running the IT organization, the CIO that works in your team. What are your expectations of the CIO, and how do you see that this role has maybe changed over the last 5-10 years?
I think it's still evolving. I think technology, in general, technology is becoming a key part of strategy. I simply don't see how you're going to define a strategy without thinking how your technology is going to help or not help that strategy. I don't see those two things disconnected. So I think the CIO, or in general the technology function, is way more ingrained into strategy and operations now than it used to be. And we like to have those conversations when we're thinking, all right, new markets, we're going to make this acquisition, we're going to enter into this country. All right, how are we going to support that from a technology standpoint? And for example, we make a lot of acquisitions. And one important thing for us is, are we going to be able to integrate that company fast enough? Because if we don't integrate it fast enough, you're not going to see the results in the operation at the speed that we want. So I think the IT role, although it's difficult to say what is IT, what is product, but in general the technology function, I think it's more and more part of the strategy of the company. And there's one very important thing here, I believe. Software, particularly software, is becoming a more important component of almost every product. Whether it's a physical product, like we offer physical services, or a digital product. For digital products, it's very obvious, but for physical products, the percentage or the contribution of software to enhance that product, I think it's only going to grow. We see it growing. You can say that from Uber, or you can say that from us, but or a telecom company. It's everywhere, and it's going to grow, continue growing. So I think you need to really interiorize that and see the software, both IT and software development of new products, as an absolute key component of your strategy. And you have to be very good at that. There's no two thoughts about it. If you're not good at that, you are probably going to have some hard times.
Absolutely. Now let's talk a bit about your team and your management style. I mean, we're getting closer to who you are as a leader, as a manager, as a person. So let's first talk about your management style. You said I have the best team in the world that works with me. Well, how do you build top teams? What is your strategy there?
My strategy, I don't know if it works for everybody, but my strategy is pretty simple. I try to hire the best at what they do. My CIO is way better than I am at managing IT. My innovation guy is way better than I am at managing my innovation. Same for HR, same for finance, and same for cybersecurity. So I think the first thing is I try to get the best talent at what they do. Mm-hmm. And what I try to give them is direction. So this is and vision and context. This is where the company is, this is where we want to be, and this is how you contribute to that. So I think those are very simple things, but they make a total difference. So if you're in innovation and you know our aim is to have whatever percentage of the top line coming from new products, and that's part of your remit, this is part of what you have to do. That helps you understand, all right, I understand what I need to do, and I can move in the right direction without day-to-day micromanagement. So clear vision, clear direction. be there with them in the hard times. So when you have crisis, you have to show up. You always have to show up, but you have to be there and be together and suffer together. And what they are expecting from you is that you make the call. So make the calls. You can fail, but make the bloody call. Nobody can wait for, hey, yeah, I'm going to think about it. Well, no, we're in a crisis here. What do we do? So I think those are basic things, but they really make a difference. The other thing I try to focus on is it's way better to have people that are internally motivated than externally motivated. So what is the internal motivation? Yeah. What is the internal driver of everyone? Yeah. And if you understand that and it's aligned with your objective, they're going to fly on their own, and you're going to be totally unnecessary.
So that's how you build successful teams. Let's talk about leadership, because leadership is, of course, different than management. And you said you had a serious cybersecurity incident. Maybe that's a good example to talk about how do you lead an organization? How do you make sure that people want to follow you?
I think leadership, I always say that leadership is something that people give to you because they need to, it's built on trust, right? So one thing is authority. We all know authority. For someone to be a leader of something, people need to follow, need to trust, need to understand, need to be willing to go in that direction. So I think that's the key element. Be humble, understand what the situation is, where do you want to go, where do you think things need to go, communicate that effectively, and be honest. There's no work around that. In a crisis, cyber incident, again, you have to very quickly grasp the situation, understand the situation. People need to trust that you're going to do the right things for the organization. You're not going to be saving your team or someone else or just finger pointing someone else. You're going to focus on the solution and what the best thing for the company is. This happens every day. And you just need to be able to convey that, and people need to see and transpire that that's what you are trying to achieve. They might not be in agreement. Not everybody's going to be in agreement all the time, but they're going to believe and trust what you're saying because it's honest and it's the good thing for the organization. I think that's I believe, number one principle in leadership. Number 1, 2, and 3.
And so what do you think your teams today and in the past would say about you? When you're not around, how would they describe your leadership style?
I don't know about that. They probably say that I'm demanding. I don't know. But I think they would say that they are normally put in situations that are challenging and motivating, that really demand the best from them, and that they deliver and they raise to their best. And that's the environments where I like. Those are high performance environments. That's what I like. And normally that's where those are the situations where I find myself into.
So Javier, what is it that really drives you in your work and in your life? What are the core energy that lets you do what you do?
That's a profound question. I tend to find myself very happy or very satisfied in situations where you are metaphorically with one foot on a known environment, controlled environment, predictable environment, and another foot on the new environment, which represents progress, represents evolution, represents innovation, change. And I think that's where I find the biggest satisfaction. That's why I'm not a good guy for managing very stable situations. I find that not super fulfilling to me. But I do like these situations, like we're talking about all the time, transformation of large organizations, where you have part of the organization here, you want to get there, but you got to do that, and you need to really connect with the rhythm of the organization. So there's no magic formula for this. You really need to understand the dynamics of the organization and see at what speed, how much weight are you going to put on your foot that's on the innovation and the change and the progress, how much weight are you going to put on the other foot. And when a good week is when you achieve both things. You get a very good result because something on a day-to-day basis is working fine, and you did the deal, you satisfied the customer, your employee is happy, whatever. At the same time, half of your attention is focused on how we're going to do it better tomorrow. What new technologies, what new products are going to launch that are going to make this better. That's when, personally, I find the best, most satisfying moments.
Now, Javier, you shared with us your personality, your MBTI personality type, and it's a common thread that we use in our leadership deep dive videos. And your personality type is you are an ENFJ, also known as the protagonist. So it's more extroverted, more intuitive. You are strong on the feeling side, and you have more a judging personality as well. And typically, people with this personality type, they are warm, forthright types that love helping others, and that tend to have strong ideas and values, and they back their perspective with creative energy to achieve their goals. How does that sound?
Sounds great. I don't know. I have to say I had a lot of fun doing the questionnaire. That thing was very, it was very eye-opening. Sometimes these things, you learn a lot from yourself when you do those things. How do you react to this situation? Absolutely. Well, if you're put in this, how do you? I think it was very useful. It sounds pretty accurate. I mean, like I was describing before, if you want to move an organization, you have to be very empathic. You really need to connect with, the empathy is very important. You need to connect with what the real situation is now and where it can go. So you do need to have both understanding of the situation, but also a very clear vision of where it has to go. And I like to, I don't, normally when you try to do these things only based on your vision without really connecting with the way situations are today, it fails miserably for all the good reasons, right? You know you want to get there, but you need to know what is the path. You need to discover. More than know, you need to discover the path. And how do you discover that? You discover that by understanding how people operate, why things are the way they are. It's not because people are stupid. There are reasons why things are the way they are. So you need to understand where you are and why you're there and how you're going to move. So you need personally, I think it helps when you try to connect with that. Listen, understand, but also deploy the vision and the drive to get to that vision. That's a little bit of my metaphor. Funny enough, it's similar to my metaphor of these two, one thing here and one there.
Now, people with ENFJ personality types, the typical strengths are that they are tolerant, that they're very reliable, charismatic, altruistic, and they are natural leaders. I mean, as far as I know you, that fits the bill quite well.
I don't know.
But now it's the interesting part. Every coin has two sides. People with this personality type also have some weakness, or let's call them development areas. And so I wanted to, and that's the most important, more interesting part, let's say. So ENFJs, they can be overly idealistic, too selfless, too sensitive sometimes. They can have fluctuating self-esteem, and sometimes they struggle to make tough decisions. Do you recognize any of these weaknesses, and how did you overcome them? How did you develop in these areas?
Interesting. So when you need to make a call, I said before that's important that you make a call for your teams, right? And some of those calls are tough calls. Normally you are very conscious of the impact on other people. And although they do not, you try to convince them, you try to mobilize them, but sometimes you defer. And you are the one who needs to make a call. You can delay that to an extent, but not beyond a certain extent. So eventually you need to make a call. I don't think I have a problem with that. I do have a problem, not a problem, but I am sensitive of how that is going to impact. And you have to be. Again, you have to respect a lot of any company that has achieved what this company or any other company that survived 30 years or 20 years or 40 years, it's made of really talented people. Business is a very tough thing, and companies do not survive, just magically. They survive and they thrive because people have done very good efforts at some point. So you need to very consciously understand that and respect that. However, you also understand that some of those things have to change and you have to push in a given direction. So from a character standpoint, you need to be able to manage both those things. And sometimes you might not be able to make a call because you sense the impact is going to be too high and you're delaying. My experience is intuitively, when you sense that something is correct, do it the sooner the better. No. And sometimes you did.
And where did you learn that? Where did you learn to make tough decisions better sooner than later? Because it's probably better to make them soon enough.
I learned that with some team decisions. So when you have someone in the team that is not performing, and you invest and you try to raise him or her and get them to perform better, sometimes you try, but it's not going to work. For whatever reason, it doesn't. There's no cultural fit. There's no job fit. Pull the trigger. The sooner the better. You learn that the hard way. Yeah. Eventually, after trying that for a year, you end up saying, okay, this didn't work. We just need to stop it. And you could have saved a year to the person, the organization, and yourself. So small problems are manageable. Small problems left alone tend to get bigger. And you don't want problems to get bigger because they become unmanageable or create a lot of drama or more dramatic situations to solve. So tackle them early.
So in your personal life, in your professional life, do you have a personal mantra, a saying that helps you, I don't know, to make decisions or to think about things? What's your personal mantra?
You made me think. I don't know if I have a personal mantra. I try to, if you read this Marcus Aurelius Meditations, I'm going to get a little bit philosophical here, but if you read and you read this, if you read the Stoics, they tell you something very simple, and that is, you don't own or you cannot control the things that happen to you, but you do control the way you react to them. This is a very Stoic way of looking at things. So Marcus Aurelius really put it in three things. He said something like objective judgment. So when you look at things, try to be objective when you judge the situation. Selfless action. So you're not doing that for your benefit, or try to. It's always very difficult. And acceptance and accept reality. Accept the way things are because you cannot control them. Mm-hmm. And I think about that a lot. Are you being objective? Are you really looking at reality objectively? Are you being selfless in your action? Or are you driven by your ego, your power, your ambition? You need to really deconstruct why are you reacting or why are you acting? And I think a lot about that. I don't know if that answers the question, but it's...
Absolutely. But it's amazing that 2,000 years after he has written these words, you are still inspired by that. I mean, that's fascinating.
Because it's very smart. And coming from someone so powerful, and took the time to actually reflect on these things, I think it's very smart. It says a lot about him, and something that's applicable to all of us.
Let's go a level deeper in trying to understand who you are as a leader. And let's talk a bit about your core values. I mean, you shared with us that you have a family, you have 2 kids, they're 14 and 16 years, teenagers. What are the core values that you are trying to pass on to them? How do you want, with which values do you want to see them become successful adults?
I think what you pass to them and also to other people is how you act more than what you say. So you really want to be consistent, whatever values you have, that you act them out. That's the first thing. You cannot be inconsistent. That's not good for you, it's not good for them. Also, now they are teenagers, so they are in a period in their lives when they are coming out of the environment where they were safe and in a more, things were kind of settled by their parents, my wife and myself, onto an environment where they want to set their own reality. It happened to all of us, and it happened to all of our kids. So I pay a lot of attention to share with them or teach them. In the end, it's your duty and your responsibility to be the best version of yourself, the best person you can be. Person, broadly speaking, as a friend, as a brother, as a son, as a student. So once you understand that it's your duty, there are less excuses. There is less, you take the challenge because you respect yourself, because you want to be the best version of yourself. This is a very difficult thing to do even for adults. It's very difficult. Way more difficult for teenagers. But I try to make them think that way because because that's what they can do. Those are the types of things that they can act on and try to identify when they are not being the best version of themselves and why is that and what do they need to change. And that's something that's a very personal journey. Each one of us needs to find that. So that's, I think, a very important value, if I can pass that to them.
Okay. So consistency and responsibility. I mean, just one way to maybe summarize it. Who did you learn that from? Or let's put the question a bit broader. Who are the important figures in your life? Who are the mentors, the people that you look up to in your life that, except for next to Marcus Aurelius, that you learn from?
Well, vicarious learning is very important. You sometimes learn from people that you have in your life. You learn a lot from other people that you don't have in your life. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story there. But people that I learned from or that motivated me in the past, I was really motivated by my grandfather when I was younger. He was an entrepreneur coming from nothing in a small village, and he really helped a lot of people and was very successful in business. I had some of my peers in my startups, in the startups where I participated, that I learned a lot from, and that were really motivating to me. When I was at Oracle, I really had some very, very good people that I learned from Larry Ellison down to some of the top engineers and managers there, really focused on excellence at everything they did. I learned a lot from my peers. Now, in general, I tend to pay a lot of attention to people that have the ability to understand complex situations and distill them down to the essence. So what exactly is going on and what do you need to act on to have the best result? And I find that's every day becoming more important, because I don't know if it's the age or whatever, but complexity is just increasing. I mean, there are so many things going on. There's technology here and legislation and political instability and whatnot. How you want to be surrounded by people that effectively make sense of that and guide and focus on the key things. And when you see companies that are doing that, or managers or leaders that are doing that, that's you learn a lot from that.
What's the best thing that ever happened to you in your life, and what's it that you're most grateful for in your life?
My two sons, the birth of my two sons. I think from a personal standpoint, those were the best moments. It's a new life just coming. I think that's very. Those are super super moments that give you a lot of energy. I always say this, it's funny, a personal story, Hendrik. I remember when I was younger, when I had my first one, and I had a lot of friends, this was back in Oracle, that, oh, so you have a new song, you're not going to be sleeping, you'll be deprived of sleep, you're going to be tired, exhausted. And I was like, well, you don't sleep, but I get a lot of energy coming from the new situation. So that was, those moments were very, and they still are, very relevant, I think, to me in my life.
Now, we have successful moments and happy moments. We also have sad moments and bad things that happen in our lives. So if you want to share, what is maybe one of the worst things that happened in your life, and what was the effect? What did you learn from that?
Personal or business, or both?
Well, let's start with personal.
Personal, when I lost my mom passed away years ago, many years ago, and I was there, I was in front of her. And at some moment, you see life in front of you, of a loved person for you, and the next moment life is gone. And that, you ask yourself, why? What's going on here? What happened here? And that was very intense. And throughout the years, or throughout a lot of time after the fact, that gets you thinking and makes you understand how vulnerable you are. And that makes you humble, because it can happen to me now, coming out from this room. And you gotta be living your life consistent with the fact that anytime can happen to you. That was an eye-opening thing, a very relevant thing to learn personally. And I try to live true to that. Don't leave things unsolved, particularly personal things. Don't leave them unsolved, because something can happen and you can never solve them. And you don't want to be on either side. You don't want to be the one that leaves, and you don't want to be the one that stays. Solve things, personal things, solve them quickly. Don't get them unsolved. So that's something I learned from that on a personal basis.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, on professional level, and maybe a good way to phrase the question is, professionally, what was your most brilliant failure that you ever had to live through, and what did you learn from that?
I've had many. I've got many. But I think we were talking about startups before, and some of we were successful sometimes and not so successful other times. When you have a startup, when you create a startup, you are part of the founding members, and you love the creature. We're talking about sons before. It's like a son. It's like you really love the creature, and you want it to be successful, and you put so much effort in there. When they don't work, it's really hard, particularly when you attracted others to invest in your company, and people were trusting you, and your employees, your team members came because of what you're trying to achieve, right? And when you fail, that's hard. That's very difficult to swallow. And we failed miserably in one of our startups. It's years ago, so I can smile now, but it was hard. It was hard because we lost a lot of money from friends and family and ourselves, of course. And we had.
Now, what did you learn from this failure of this company? What was your main learning from this?
I learned, it's a very basic thing. I learned many things. I'm going to give you a couple of them. The first thing is you really need to know what you're building. We were developing software products. What are you doing for whom? Who is going to pay for that, and why? Because frequently you get in love with the technology and with your own vision, and what, we're doing this thing, it's going to be wild, but you lose sight of who is going to pay for it, and why are they going to pay for it. So there's that tension, and it needs to be, because sometimes you're developing things that they don't yet have a market or a mature market, and you have to believe in what you're doing. But that tension, you don't lose sight of that. The second thing is managing teams in those situations. Again, there's nowhere to hide. Don't sugarcoat things. Things are not working. This is what's happening. And we had to go through several rounds of people reducing their salaries and exchanging those for stock options and whatnot. Be transparent. No sugarcoating. People are mature. If they're not mature, they shouldn't be there. So be clear, direct, transparent with people, with everybody. And the other thing I learned, funny enough, is a lot of people actually lost a lot of money with us, including ourselves, but nobody got really upset because we were clear and transparent to them. This is risky. Yeah. Don't put here the money that you're going to need for your retirement. You might lose it, and they lost it. Yeah, but nobody, no hard feelings.
Nobody died, and it was just money. But still,
and a lot of time for a lot of people. Apart from that, everybody learned a lot about technology and management and everything.
You're an active member in the advisory board of CIONET in Madrid. Yes. Why are you doing this? Why is the community important for you?
I think we can all contribute to make others thrive. And in general, like I said, I think we are going through times where there's half of the world that has been living without really paying a lot of attention to technology, that really need to come and understand a lot of the things that technology can do for them. Because I honestly believe there are very big opportunities, but you have to bring them, or you have to go there, however you want to put it. So I think CIONET is a good way of impacting, because there are so many organizations, so many companies, and so many people, impacting those of us that are living in technology-related jobs or tasks, but also those that are not, those that really need, where you can really impact positively the job of others and the companies and the success of companies that are, like I said, not necessarily technology from the beginning or with technology background. And I think CIONET is a very good platform for that.
Javier, what is the advice that you would give to your younger self, or that you would give to ambitious young professionals that are watching these interviews and that have the ambition to become a successul digital leader like yourself?
I think a lot of the things that we mentioned throughout the conversation, but I would highlight also another important thing, I believe. For those in the middle of transformations, or that are going to tackle organizational changes and transformation driven by technology, don't go half-heartedly into it. That doesn't work. I mean, if you know the world is going in one direction, and I think we all kind of agree, we can dispute details, but we all understand that the role of software and technology in our lives is growing, and it's going to continue growing, hence also in our organizations, hence also the importance of understanding those and managing software in our companies. Don't try to put badges, don't go half-heartedly, it's my advice. You really need to get into the depth and the fundamentals and the first principles that are going to govern your company moving forward. That means normally investments are going to be relevant. Patience is going to be relevant, because you're not going to, the bigger the company, the bigger the inertia, the more time is going to get. But keep the focus, and don't be, this is easier said than done, but try not to succumb to the quarterly pressure, because the momentum you gain with time, it can be totally destroyed once you stop the effort or you cancel a project or an investment or whatever. These are challenging tasks, super fulfilling. I think there is no better managerial challenge in our era than these ones, moving and transforming organizations. But again, go full-heartedly into it, have patience, and try not to stop it. This is like training. This is like personal training. If you train 3 days per week or 4 days per week, even 15 minutes, do the 15 minutes. If you miss one day, you're going to go down to almost square one. So don't do that. That would be my advice for people that are going through or starting processes like big transformation projects.
So Javier, thank you so much for your time, for your inspiration, for sharing all your ideas and your experiences. It was really a pleasure. I look forward to having a nice dinner together in Madrid very soon. Thank
you, Hendrik, for inviting me and for setting up this marvelous organization, CIONET, and the vastness of the network. I think it's just amazing. I learn a lot from all the interactions there. And yes, you are very welcome. And it would be a great pleasure once we've gone through all of this to meet in person. Would be delighted to do so. Thank you very much.